Okay, so get this. Millions of people in over 30 countries are already using SODIS to access clean drinking water.
Wow, millions. That's incredible.
It is. And it's not just happening in remote villages or anything. Even after disasters like the 2004 tsunami, SODIS played a crucial role in providing safe drinking water to communities in crisis.
Okay, now that's what I call real-world impact. So we're talking about a method so simple, it can be implemented in the most challenging situations.
Yeah.
But let's back up for a second. What exactly is the scope of the problem SODIS is trying to solve?
We're talking about a global water crisis of staggering proportions. Did you know that over 1 billion people worldwide lack access to safe drinking water?
A billion people. That's just mind-boggling.
It is, and it leads to a horrifying number of preventable illnesses and deaths, primarily among children.
That's heartbreaking. I mean, it's just unfathomable that in this day and age, something as basic as clean water is still out of reach for so many.
It is, and that's why techniques like SODIs are so crucial. It's all about finding accessible, low-cost solutions to address this massive challenge.
Absolutely. So let's get back to the nitty-gritty of SODIs. You mentioned there are specific guidelines to make sure it's done right. Walk me through it. What's the step-by-step process?
Okay, so you want to start with a clean, and I mean spotless, transparent peat bottle, the kind most of us are familiar with.
Got it. A regular plastic water bottle?
Exactly. But any residue or dirt on the bottle can actually reduce the effectiveness of the UV rays. So cleanliness is key here.
Right. You want those rays to penetrate the water as effectively as possible. So clean bottle, check. What's next?
Then you fill it with water, obviously.
Yeah.
And ideally, you want the clearest source available.
Makes sense. Clearer water, better penetration for those UV rays.
Exactly. Now, this is where the magic happens. You expose that bottle to direct sunlight for at least 6 hours. 6 hours minimum on a bright, sunny day. If it's cloudy, you'll need 2 consecutive days. You got to give those UV rays enough time to do their thing.
Got it. Clean bottle, clear water, ample sunlight. It really does sound incredibly straightforward. But how exactly are those UV rays neutralizing the harmful stuff in the water?
Well, think of it this way. Sunlight contains these things called ultraviolet rays, or UV rays for short, and some of those rays pack a real punch. Like they have enough energy to actually penetrate the water and mess with the genetic makeup of those nasty little microbes.
So we're not just talking about killing them off, we're talking about preventing them from multiplying. That's amazing.
Precisely. It's like we're using nature's own weapon against these microscopic threats. And the best part, it's free and readily available.
I got to ask, though, is it really as effective as, say, boiling water? I mean, that's what we've always been told to do in a pinch.
You'd be surprised. Studies have actually shown that SODIS can eliminate up to 99.9% of those nasty bugs that cause diarrhea.
99.9%. Seriously, that's almost unbelievable.
I know, right? It's surprisingly powerful. And unlike boiling, which can be tricky if you don't have a heat source or enough fuel, SODIS is completely free and doesn't require any special equipment.
That's incredible. So is it basically a foolproof method then? Are there any downsides or things people should be aware of?
Well, while incredibly effective, SODIS isn't a catch-all solution. It can't eliminate every single contaminant out there.
So it's not like a magic bullet. There are limitations.
Exactly. For example, if the water is super contaminated or really murky, like full of dirt and debris, those UV rays might not reach all the bad guys hiding in there.
That makes sense. It's like trying to shine a flashlight through mud. Are there any other situations where SODIS might not be the ideal solution?
Another thing to keep in mind is that while SODIS is generally considered safe for most folks, we need to be extra careful with the littlest ones.
Babies and young children.
Exactly. Their immune systems are still developing, so for them, boiling water, which totally nukes everything, is still the gold standard. It's the safest bet until they're a bit older.
So it's about choosing the right method for the specific situation. It's like having a toolkit of water purification options.
Exactly. It's all about being prepared and knowing your options.
Speaking of options, I'm really curious to hear about some real-world examples of SODIS in action. You mentioned the 2004 tsunami earlier. Can you tell us a bit more about that?
Absolutely. After the tsunami hit Sri Lanka, the water treatment systems were basically wiped out. It was a recipe for disaster. But amidst the chaos, people turned to SODIS. It was a way to get safe drinking water when nothing else was available.
That's incredible. I can only imagine how many lives were saved because of this simple technique.
It really highlights the power of accessible solutions, and Sri Lanka isn't the only success story.
Really? Tell me more.
Well, there was this pilot program in Thailand where communities started using SODIS, and they saw an 86.6% drop in illness rates. It was
And
remarkable.
86.6%, that's massive. That's like almost eliminating waterborne illnesses entirely.
It's pretty close. And there's another case in Kenya during a cholera outbreak where using SODIS was linked to a much lower chance of getting sick. It really drove home the life-saving potential of this method.
Wow, those are some powerful examples.
Hmm.
But beyond those immediate crisis situations, does SODIs have a long-term impact?
Absolutely. A study in Bangladesh found that in villages where people use SODIs, there was a significant decrease in kids coming down with diarrhea. We're not just talking about short-term relief here, we're talking about lasting improvements in public health.
That's what makes this so impactful. It's about giving communities the tools to take control of their own well-being. But it begs the question, if SODIs is so effective, why isn't it being implemented everywhere? What are the roadblocks?
Well, for one thing, even something as straightforward as SODIS needs to be communicated effectively. We need to make sure people understand how it works and why it matters.
Awareness and education are key.
Exactly. And let's not forget that old habits die hard. People are used to doing things a certain way, and change takes time, even when it's for the better.
So it's not just about the technology itself, it's about changing mindsets and behaviors.
Absolutely. And we need to make sure people are using it correctly. If they're not using clean bottles or if they're not leaving them in the sun for long enough, it won't be as effective.
Right. Those details matter. It's about quality control and making sure the implementation is spot on.
Precisely. We can't just assume it'll work magically without the right approach.
That makes a lot of sense. You know, we've been talking a lot about the benefits of using plastic bottles for SODIs, but it does raise a question. Is there any risk associated with using plastic for water purification, especially when it's exposed to direct sunlight? It's a valid concern for sure. We're bombarded with information these days about plastics and potential health risks, especially when it comes to things we ingest. It makes you wonder.
I get it. It's a question a lot of people have. But the good news is there's been a ton of research on this very topic.
Oh, really? That's reassuring.
Yeah, like the Federal Laboratories for Materials Testing and Research, they did some seriously rigorous testing on this whole peat bottle thing with SODIs.
What did they find?
Basically, when you use SODIs correctly with those peat bottles, there's no health risk.
That's a relief. Science to the rescue, as always.
Right. It's great that researchers are on top of this kind of stuff, especially with a method that's so widely applicable. But I want to circle back to what you were saying earlier about getting this info out there. We've got this crazy simple, crazy effective technique, scientifically proven safe. Now what? How do we make sure it reaches the people who need it most?
It's a big question, right? It feels like it's got to be about more than just handing out pamphlets or something. People need the knowledge, but they also need the tools and the support to actually put it into practice.
Exactly. Imagine if we could integrate SODIS education into schools, community centers, you name it. Make it just a part of everyday life, especially in areas where clean water is a constant struggle.
Right, like it's just common knowledge. You learn it in school, you teach it to your kids, it becomes second nature.
And think about the ripple effect. Healthier communities, kids missing less school because they're not sick. It's about way more than just water.
It's about breaking a cycle, right?
Right.
And it all starts with something as simple as a plastic bottle and a little bit of sunlight. It's kind of mind-blowing when you think about it.
It really is. It makes you realize that sometimes the most elegant solutions are the simplest ones.
Absolutely. But it also highlights the responsibility we all have to share these solutions, to support the organizations doing this work on the ground. It can't just be a one-off thing.
Couldn't agree more. Whether we're talking about SODIs or any other life-changing innovation, awareness is key. We have to keep talking about it, keep sharing the knowledge.
Absolutely. And on that note, I want to thank you, the listeners, for joining us for another deep dive. We covered a lot of ground today, but the big takeaway for me is the power of simple solutions.
Couldn't have said it better myself. Sometimes the most impactful solutions are right in front of us, just waiting to be discovered.
And that's what we're all about here, encouraging that sense of curiosity and exploration. So until next time, keep asking questions, keep seeking answers, and keep diving deep into the world around you.